What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi back with my man Eric Sheet-Tabor. Happy Tuesday, I guess it is. Happy stretch, but we're gonna say it's we're starting to go through this whole thing. It's been kind of a little bit of a nightmare, but kind of had some interesting things. We're gonna talk about some poker today. We're gonna maybe talk just real quickly for Sheets a little bit about horse racing. He's got some other surprise bets that I don't know about that he wants, that are out there that he's gonna inform me about. Sheets, how you doing, man? What's happening? Coronavirus? We know we talked pre-show, but why don't you just update the people how your mom is and all that stuff?
Yeah, my mom had it. For those who didn't know, my mom had it, and she, went through issues of getting tested, but eventually confirmed that we knew already that she had it, and took a full 2 weeks for her to get back to, normal, whatever it is. So she's better, which is good. But I'm telling you, man, it's just kind of the law of averages. You kind of get older when you interact with just more people in general in life, that just that many more people are going to have it. And remember, I'm from New York, so it's just going to be natural that a lot of people I'm in contact with kind of have it. And slowly but surely, it's been trickling down to me news of kids I've coached and parents of the kids obviously live in the same house have had it. The good news is, I don't want to curse it, but I've had no deaths of people I actually knew personally in New York yet. Okay. There was one guy from law school who's not from around here. I wasn't really friends with, but I just knew him from law school, who passed away. But no one I know personally who's died yet, which is, that's great news. But it's just a lot of the statistics are, it's just like a lot of raw people around here, and a lot of raw people that I know and just who know people. It's a little messed up. So with respect to gambling, right? So here's the deal.
Let's just say I want to congratulate. I'm happy that your mom's doing better. That's a good thing. Good piece of good information. So
absolutely.
Let's get into gambling now.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to throw that out there.
So I did put some horse racing stuff on there. And again, I don't know where I'm going to go with this. It depends on how quickly, if at all, baseball and basketball and football, whatever, come back. So I really don't want to do too much horse racing content for a lot of reasons, but I'll do it, if people are interested in it. And like today, there's actually at Fonner Park in Nebraska, which you never would hear about if every other track wasn't closed, right? But Fonner Track in Nebraska, actually, they're giving away part of a pick 5 jackpot carryover, about probably like $2 million in there. So I might put something up there after we get off of this about that. And I actually just, we could talk about this offline or online, but I may as well tell you is I actually, just for the hell of it, emailed ExpressBet, FanDuel, TVG, like all the different major horse racing betting sites. And I said, listen, I'm thinking, I have a DFS thing that we're doing, and I might start doing a horse racing thing. What kind of affiliate deal can you give us? And so let's see what happens with that. Maybe they'll do something where we, if any of you guys out there really want to do horse racing and learn how to do it, maybe we'll work out a deal that if you sign up for one of the online betting sites through us, you get a break or something like that. So we'll see where that goes. I prefer, honestly, to have DFS baseball back and basketball and stuff like that. But just for the hell of it, I am doing some horse racing stuff kind of for fun up there. And if anybody wants to take a look at it, I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do it, because so much of it depends on what the odds of these horses are as the actual races go off. So for me to do like an hour beforehand, even, it's just not saying meaningless. It's just kind of hard without knowing exactly what the odds are. It's the equivalent if you're doing DFS. If you were able to know exactly what the ownership was, like 30 seconds before lock, you would wait till 30 seconds before lock to put your bet in. You know what I mean? And that's kind of similar. Mm-hmm. So with respect to the other stuff, we'll get into sports in a sec, but I do want to talk about this prop bet stuff, because there was the push-up thing last week, which was really popular, which I thought was a tremendous sweat, with Bales doing the push-ups. It's the perfect example. It's a perfect sweat because it didn't take that long, but long enough that it captured your interest. And there was people on both sides of it, and it was human interest and all that stuff. There was another one, was it last night, which I really thought was going to be more entertaining than it was, but it was Melissa Burr, known on Twitter as Burberry. She did a chicken nuggets challenge that was narrated by Angry Pollock, Veronica from the Postal cheating scandal, and it was like an over-under like 57 chicken nuggets in an hour or something like that.
That's no problem. I could do that in 10 minutes.
No problem. It is what it is. That's what it was. People were betting both sides, so it must have been a good line.
Wow, I think that's I mean, maybe it's a good line, but come on.
Yeah. But she did it, unfortunately, she did it way too effortlessly. You know what I mean? Like, she should have made it look a little bit harder, then she can get more action at 70 or something like that later. Yeah. But I don't know Veronica. I mean, she's become kind of popular on Twitter because of her, you know, she was one of the announcers during the Apostle stuff who basically broke the whole story.
Her name, Veronica what?
Hang on. I'm actually going to put all this on the you can look up Burberry and Veronica.
Burberry I got. Oh, I guess I can.
Angry Pollock, I think her name is, or something.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
They were the ones making the bet.
Yeah, they were the one. They were narrating over YouTube, but just trying to provide content, which was fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought the sweat would have been a little bit more fun, but it is what it is. So what's going on right now is really, really interesting. And this one is probably kind of a shitty sweat, but it's a very interesting intellectual discussion. So I'm surprised you haven't heard about, but like you said, you were doing poker all weekend. So let me get my screen shared so I could show you.
Hi, Eric. This is Ruth Moffa.
Who's this?
I am the parent of a junior at Brandeis.
All right, so wait.
Be quiet. Hold on. No, be quiet. All right. So, okay. So Michael McDonald is So Michael McDonald is putting out this prop bet where he needs to make 90 out of 100 free throws. Okay.
Okay.
And he gets. Hold on. Let me just get rid of this person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I can't talk to you right now. You got to call back. 90 out of 100 free throws. And he gets unlimited attempts to do so. And he has until the end of 2020 to get it done. And this has garnered just an incredible amount of interest. The first thing he did was he put out that he would do it at even money. He would do 5,000 minimum, and got a lot of action to even money for a lot of good reasons. Then he moved it up to minus 200. Now he's back to minus 150. They've actually put this on poker shares as well. You can only bet against him on poker shares because he's the one doing it. And so other podcasts have already talked about this, and there's a couple of interesting things about it. Number one is that he's allowed to whatchamacallit? He is allowed to Matt, can you get that and see what that is? That's okay. He's allowed to restart whenever he wants, which is an interesting little nuance of it. And he's not like a cheater. Like, this is going to be like a real thing. Like, he's actually going to do it. It's not going to be like, you know, it's not going to.
I don't know Mike that well. I do like what I know about him, and I know that there's a lot of people in the poker world that might disagree with that last statement you just made. I don't agree. I'm on your side on this one, but I've had an endless amount of people tell me some negative things about him, which I don't agree with. But they're also always sort of the bitter people. I just want to throw that out there.
So let me give you a sample of his current form.
Okay.
You ready? Here it is.
I like him. It's not me. Oh, is it shooting?
Yeah.
He's saying no lane violation, but
no. I know he changed it for no lane. These are all lane violations. He was just screwing around when he did this. He's literally hasn't played basketball since 9th grade. He's admittedly not an athlete. He's admittedly not any good at basketball at all. I would estimate he's probably like a 40% free throw shooter, like right now. Okay, like maybe 45% or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, the interesting component of this, okay, is the statistics of it, like the unlimited samples. In other words, he can take as many shots as he wants, as long as one time where he says he's starting, he gets 90 out of 100. Okay, and for me, I'm not gonna bet on one way or the other for no other reason that it's a ridiculously awful sweat because it's a 9-month thing, and you're basically. I mean, he says he has to film like the winner, but basically what's gonna have to happen is we wake up every morning just wondering if you lost. You know what I mean? Like that's what ends up happening. You wake up, oh, did McDonald get me yet? And it's just kind of a shitty sweat. You know what I mean? If you're betting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But statistically, it's a very interesting problem for me, and I've spent at least 5 hours already, like on the problem. So instinctively, like what is your, and you're like probably the only person on the face of the earth that hasn't heard this yet. So what is your initial instinct?
I don't know why I haven't heard it. I was locked in poker mode for days on end, and you know what it's like. Sometimes you just don't pay, when you're playing many tables, you just don't pay attention to other things. My initial thought is that anybody should be able to have one thing by the end of, if they're, especially based on that. Does he have a court in his house? It looks like.
No, he's gonna find one. No, he's gonna find like a regulation thing, because
So
the one that I showed you is
able to practice enough. I'm not worried about that. I mean, he's obviously gonna have to. It's not like he's gonna get lucky and do that now. Like, yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's not easy to make 90 out of 100 free throws, but if you gave, I would wager that if you gave me, if I had the same bet, I think I would do it for like a month and I would probably get there easily. But if he doesn't play at all or never really played at all, maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's actually more interesting than I thought with the not really having been much of a player at all. But it's such an easy thing to do if you take enough practice. Like, I don't know, man. I'm struggling with this one. It's easy to do 1 out of 1,000 times, let's say. It's not necessarily easy to do one time.
So since you mentioned it, I will show you and show the fans what I've kind of constructed here.
Oh my God, you are what a lunatic.
All right. So what this is, for those of you that are statistical people, this is what's known as the binomial distribution, all right? What happens is, in statistics, there are ways of figuring out stuff like this, like given a certain probability, what's the chances of making an exact number of shots or at least number of shots, things like that. So what I did was created first a little spreadsheet with these different variables of making at least 90 out of 100 trial sample. And what I did was I put this probability of success to kind of estimate what his free throw percentage is. So we could always kind of, screw around with this. And what this does, it puts out different inputs. Like, for example, let's just say that he were an 80% free throw shooter, for example. What this means is that if he did it just one time, the chances of him getting it would be like 5 out of 1,000. I mean, it's like really unlikely.
You're telling me that the chance of an 80% free throw shooter making 90 out of 100 free throws is less than 5%, less than 1%?
What's that?
That doesn't seem accurate. That doesn't seem right. Because
No.
5%. That makes more sense. Oh, would it overall?
No. What this means?
I see what you've done. No, I see it. What I'm trying to understand is how can the odds, if you're an 80% free throw shooter, how can the odds only be less than 0.5% on you making 9 out of 90?
Because 90 is a lot.
But 90s, I mean, it's hypothetical. It's only 10% better than the number that you're already at.
You also could get 70 sometimes.
No, of course, I understand. But also, most like free throw shooters, I mean, every free throw shooter in the NBA, you can go ahead and add on an extra, 10% to each of them, maybe even higher on anybody under 7. People in the 70s are really like 85 to 90% free throw shooters, but they're not if they were shooting 100 in a row. Because the odds, what I'm getting at is, how do you factor? Because when you shoot 100 in a row, it's not the same as shooting 100 over the course of days. Obviously, you're going to have a much better chance to make a much more in a row once you're shooting them in a row, right?
Just so you know, also, he also has to get his own rebounds.
Okay.
And one ball.
One ball. Okay, that makes sense.
So it's a little harder. You know what I mean?
So we're saying a 90% free throw shooter would do that 5% of the time.
No, a 90% free throw shooter will do it about 58% of the time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misread the thing. Okay.
That's the difference between a 90 and an 80, okay?
But you're telling me.
That's the difference.
Wow, that seems crazy to me.
Now, the other thing that's interesting, but what's interesting to me is that if he were an 80% free throw shooter, he'd be a favorite on 121 quote unquote attempts. In other words, if he did this 121 times, like 100, he'd be about a 52% chance of having done it at one time, right?
Right. What about if he was 50%?
But if he's like, for example, even 75%, it's going to take him 5,000 chances.
Jesus.
Now there's variance involved, whatever it is. So this is now again, this is what I haven't figured out yet. I haven't really worked this out. I haven't figured out what the impact is of him being able to quit. In other words, like if he goes 0 for 9, like his first 9.
I think if he goes 0 for 1, he can start over again.
Well, that's a very interesting question. You know what I mean? Like at what point, and this is what this spreadsheet doesn't factor in yet, and I have to figure it out, is it's an interesting sub question is what's his optimal strategy supposed to be? And like what number, like where should, obviously if he's, 0 for 9, he should give up, right?
I think if I was him, if I was me doing it, I would wait till I made 10 in a row before I started going.
So if you missed your first shot, you just do another one.
Oh yeah, and
that's fine.
It doesn't hurt. Yeah, because it doesn't hurt you, Andy.
And what if you're like 8 for 10?
No way.
You quit on 8 for 10.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would quit on 9 for 10. I think.
Right.
I think I would need to make my first 10 because the only advantage he has in this whole thing is the unlimited options, the unlimited times he can do it. So I would restart as many times as I could and get the best optimal start I possibly can. Take those ones as seriously as I can. One other thing about this is these, they might say, oh, you take 1,000 times to do it. Has anybody ever tried? You guys ever try to shoot 100 free throws 1,000 times? That'll take a long time. and it'll, by the way, if you're going to do even if you're just going to do it, let's just say you try and do 2,000 in a day. That's going to make that'll wear your arm down. That's a lot of shots.
I will tell you this. Now this is different because they are 3-point shots, but I have my kids who are, obvious. They're in much better shape than Mike McDonald. Okay. I have them take like 500 threes, like off a shooting machine, for example. And 500 threes they're tired. You know what I mean? Now that's threes instead of free throws, right? But it's wearing on you, man. It wears, like you said, it wears on your arm, and after a while, it impacts your form a little bit. You know what I mean? So it's first he's got to get better for openers, right? And he's got, I don't know, man. Like my initial instinct is that he's like an enormous underdog, right? That's just my initial instinct. But now I have 2 other.
I don't think you're factoring it. I really think it's weird though I do think it's hard to come up with things like rhythm and making things in a row. And
I know.
Free throws are those kind of things that are hard to measure. I mean, I've gone out there even when I've been out of practice. You start hitting the next thing you know, you've made 40 or 50 in a row. It's not but it doesn't mean I'm a 90% free throw shooter. I'm probably like a 70% free throw shooter.
Well, and that's what he's counting on. What you're counting on is just the natural variance involved in what you're doing. He's going to run hot at some point.
Right.
So I honestly don't know the answer. So for me, I'm not going to bet on one way or the other. I'm actually just using this as kind of an intellectual challenge. I actually emailed this to a guy who teaches AP stats in the area. I said, listen, when you get done teaching, they're doing all online classes and the kids are bored out of their minds. So I said, why don't you give them something like this to work on? You could give them this extra credit or something like that. So I just find this stuff like just the statistical part of it kind of interesting. And from a gambling perspective also, so there are 2 different things happening at the same time. The first thing is one of my main mantras, which I've discussed with you a lot, is just don't bet someone else's prop. Okay. If someone brings you something where they're performing the physical activity, they're probably a favorite, right? And second of all, if you have a guy who's basically, it's his business to just never get it in bad, okay, which is basically what Michael McDonald is. I mean, he just never wants to get it in bad. That's what he lives for. You know what I mean? And, you put the 2 of those things together, it seems as though it's kind of a shitty idea to bet against him. You know what I mean? Just without knowing anything about basketball, without knowing anything. But there's one other little tiny thing that I want to show you, which may have offset that. And I'm gonna throw this in here. So this is Mazer Bowie, who I've discussed with you a lot, and I have to find it. There was the original thread which prompted this bet was, oh, here it is. Okay, so okay, let me just find this real quick. So he had bet somebody, I think it must have been A.E. Jones, that he could make like a certain amount within a couple of hours, which is where this bet started. And McDonald made like some comment where it was something like, I did this, I don't know what my percentage was, but I must have just run bad in streaks or something like that, as far as running hot. Mm-hmm. And Mazer Bowie and him got into it about this a little bit, about when Jesse was saying that running bad in streaks really isn't a thing and statistically irrelevant. And McDonald's like, I don't know what you're talking about or whatever it is.
Running back's not a thing?
Yeah, the running back, as far as being able to judge how whether he was a good free throw shooter or something like that. Like statistically, it wasn't a big deal, and it's kind of hard to explain. But like the way that they were going back and forth about it, I think that Mike might have been missing something with respect to variance and how it applies to free throws and shooting and stuff like that. And again, I have to get more into it. So the reason I bring that up is that I think that and this is a really dangerous thing to presume, but I think Mike might be missing something with his analysis of how variance is going to help or hurt him in this. So I'm gonna continue again. This is just gonna be my project, even if he never does the free throws at all, which now he's gonna have to do. I think he might be in for several $100,000 right now. I think with people that have come into him. Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you right now, if someone bet me anything like that on any number of makes or whatever, I would just I would live in the gym. I would be in my place, and I would be out there for 5 hours a day until I got it right.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what you have to assume. I mean, you have to presume that's what
that kind of money is worth it. You need to have a job right now anyway. Like, for me.
Yeah, but don't forget also, I mean, 9 months is a long time, man. I mean, like, what I also mean is that he could not have the time to do this down the road, maybe, if things kind of change and stuff with that. And it's also possible, and I think this is very possible, that after like a couple of weeks of this, I mean, he might get really not tilted. He might start to think, man, this is probably a shitty idea. Like if after like a month or so, he's like, hasn't had a single time where he's even gotten close, and he's like tired, and he's like, what the freak am I doing out here doing this? He might quit or buy out or something. This is, I mean, it's rough. It's rough. I can just picture like having to go out there and just keep shooting and just getting frustrated. And if you feel like, if you go out there, obviously, and you're like 70 out of 77 or something, and then you lose, you're like, okay, I can do this. You know what I mean? Right. But if you don't ever if you're like 2 for 12, and then like a bunch of 40 even if you run hot and you're like 40 for 50, you still lose. You know what I mean? Like, and it'll wear on you physically also to like shoot all these shots and then like, not even close. Not even close. So I don't know. And again, like if he were doing like a full, live stream every time that he was shooting, I don't know if it's a great sweat, but at least it would be fun to check in on your guy and say, oh, guy, he still sucks. I'm not worried about this. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is. So I think he's I don't like to go on instinct with these kind of things. My instinct is he's an underdog, because I do understand what he's getting at. I understand the concept of just unlimited samples, and eventually, the odds will catch up to you, and you're eventually just bound to like hit something. I get it. I still just think he's a dog after all that. So
wow, okay. It certainly is interesting because is the minimum 5,000? You can't bet. You can bet it on Poker X Factor, but it doesn't have to be 5,000.
Poker shares. Oh, I wish we did that on Poker X Factor. Your poker shares. I
bet Poker shares. My bad.
I think poker shares you have to lay 1.7 or something. I think he's still accepting 1.5 or something to 1.
But there's not a limit on the amount.
I think it's 5K. You can look through it again. What's that? I think 5K minimum. I think. If you want to bet with him directly or something like that.
Yeah. I meant like through his other thing, but yeah.
The other thing, it's like $1 euro or something. You bet whatever you want.
Yeah, I'll probably throw something. I don't really know. That's interesting. I don't know.
It's just a shitty thing to root for. You know what I mean? Like it's just. Yeah. I'd rather bet on the Nuggets. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you. That's fascinating, man. That's a good one.
Yeah.
You should be coming up with some more interesting prop games to do at home. Let's see. Yeah. What are some of the other things that we could have gone on? I feel like there's some other good prop bets that we're probably going to start seeing in the next few days that are not necessarily physical endurance. Maybe there would be some good ones. Could we do I would be happy to do an eating challenge one of these days. I'm a pretty good eater.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta put something out there that people will disagree on. You know what I mean? That's the
yeah.
So what do you think? Again, I don't know this guy, but I don't know if this is a big deal within the daily fantasy community. But Draft Cheat left the Tommy G company.
Oh, what? Just like now?
Like the last day.
Really?
Yeah.
Where's the message about it?
What's that?
What is the message about it? I don't see it.
Oh, it's like already getting. It's like a really big deal, and he's like,
how come he's not how come he's not writing about it? That's what
He was.
Oh,
It was like all day yesterday. An NDA and all this stuff. He's no longer working for Elite Fantasy. Won't be in the future. No drama that will go public. Stay tuned. They're trolling, and then apparently nothing more to add. But then like Tommy G was probably coming in. I don't follow him, so whatever.
I blocked Tommy G because I couldn't deal with him anymore, so I don't know what he wrote. What did he say about it? Wait,
I don't know really. I mean, shit on Tommy G all you want. He's one loyal friend, and then I don't know. And then he says, if you're a smaller site, I do not need a job. Can't respond to everyone. He's going to be running some amazing shit. I don't really know him, Draft Cheat. You know what I mean? From Daily Fantasy. I just know him from being a Twitter person, I mean, honestly.
He does. I mean, these guys they play these. You know, I play Draft. Draft Cheat's good. Like, you know what I mean? He's a good DFS player for sure, obviously.
Okay.
But like he, you know, most of these guys play a lot. Like him and guys like Tommy G and all. They play a lot for these live finals, and it's bad equity decisions in my opinion, but like that's what they want to do. They're more playing for like a glory type of thing, which I could give a F about. And they always sort of like want to be the best at those things. He plays big. He's a good player. I've literally never watched any of his content. I've never watched any, since for about 5 years or however, when I first started playing, I don't think I've watched any Tommy G content since then. I didn't find it all that interesting. I feel like the communication and the shock jock type of thing, like that we used to have in the 90s, this is like that on steroids and just really, really mean and nasty. And I don't particularly like the kind of people these people are in the way that they portray themselves on Twitter. But I do think that I've heard from other friends that Draft Cheat's a decent guy. There is nobody who's going to convince me that Tommy G is anything but a piece of shit. He's a complete piece of shit. And honestly, anybody who says anything different, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. I don't want to include him anymore because it turns into a firestorm that even on this break, I don't have the energy for it, but I really, really despise that human being. He's one of the worst people I've talked to.
What is he, like a gambler? I mean, like
he does DFS. I mean, he's a high stakes DFS guy.
Oh, he's a content guy. Oh, that's the site. Okay, the Daily Elite Fantasy or whatever.
Yeah, Fantasy Guru. Really, another stupid ass name. I also think too. Not my favorite group of, not my favorite bunch. I don't like the way they do things. I'm definitely more like I can be abrasive and I can be out there, but I'm not trying to go after people in a mean, intentional way, which they do all the time. They're just really successful trolls, is what they are.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, but that is interesting news from the business industry. I'm curious what he ends up doing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll ask Grant a little bit if he knows more, because Grant and he have become friends because they both are in Denver. And
so let's talk about what happened with baseball. Well, it goes back to there was a conference call between Trump and a whole bunch of big shots within of the various sports, you know, between baseball and basketball, hockey, all of them. I think it was a total of 12 to 14 commissioners and big shots that were involved in the conference call. And Trump came out, was it yesterday or the day before, just basically saying, I'm telling these guys that they should start playing or something like that. He didn't say it just like that.
Yeah.
But he's saying, listen, you know, let's see if we can make this work because.
But on Sunday when he met with all the league owners, the heads of the league commissioners, when we had the call with them, the general consensus that I heard from, look, I didn't hear the meeting. Nobody has the notes, obviously, but from people who are definitely the most connected people in this world, their feeling was September would be optimistic.
Yeah. So here's like some of these quotes. Like Trump says NFL should start on time. It's nice for him to say that, obviously. That's
September, though. I mean, that's a little different, you know.
Right.
Like I said, September's a possibility.
But what's and then Trump, I want fans back in the arena. They want to see basketball and baseball and football and hockey. They want to see their sports. I mean, yeah, he's saying nothing new. I want that too. You know, I want there to be fans back in the arenas and playing sports too. Whether that's realistic or not is something else. But within the past couple of days, you know, like baseball, which we've discussed before, is at least from a participant perspective, less dangerous to play. Let's put it that way, because there's not as much contact between the players and stuff like that. I mean, yesterday they put out a thing saying that the Major League Baseball and the MLB Players Association are focusing on a plan backed by federal health officials that can have players back in training camp by May in games soon thereafter. And there's a really nice article about that on ESPN. how they're going to be playing in Arizona, and all these different things that they're considering. Maybe electronic strike zone to maintain the distance between the catcher and the batter. For the umpires, no mound visits from the catcher or the pitching coach, like all these other types of things. On-field microphones for players as a bonus for TV viewers, things like that. And then players sitting in the empty stands 6 feet apart instead of in a dugout sitting next to each other. You know what I mean? These are like kind of things that we could kind of like brainstorm, you know what I mean? Like on the side.
That really work. Like, so the 6 feet apart thing is absolutely makes no sense to me how they're going to sit. Not to mention that you're going to end up having to go past these people. Not to mention the passageways are very narrow. Like, people aren't going to be.
No, they don't mean the fans. They mean that's where the players sit.
Oh, the players. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
The players would sit in the stands instead of the dugout.
That actually makes some sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and these things are all just kind of like in the offing. You know what I mean? Like these, these are just things they've kind of bullshitted about, just like we are. And but it's funny. Remember, I brought you to another site a few weeks ago. Bill James's site.
Yeah.
And he back then he was saying that, when do you think baseball is going to start again? This is like a month ago, or right in the teeth of it, And he says, I personally think May 15th, right? And he just got ripped. And your buddy Adam Scherer went in there right there and says, slide in my DMs, I'll bet you a fortune, whatever it is, And what Bill James has done since then has been really interesting. He's actually done this poll like every day, like when do you think baseball is going to come back? And what's interesting is tracking the public optimism of how this poll is going. Like right now, for example, it was, 43% said not this year, then 2,500. But if you go back further, obviously this makes sense, but the further you go back, the more pessimistic it is. You know what I mean? Right. So I don't know. I just think it's kind of interesting, and it would be pretty cool. Like right here, it says back on April 3rd, it's only 4 days ago, only 8% of the people, and this is based on 1,100 votes, thought there'd be in 50 days, which is, right. May 16th or so. And now it's like 20% of the people think that. So I don't know. I just find that kind of interesting to run the same poll literally every day and seeing just kind of like gauging pessimism. That's why Bill James is, Bill James, that's why he's the freaking nuts, right? So I don't know, man. I mean, there's definitely a lot of money, to be had by playing sports. There's definitely a solution that is not the best solution, but might be a passable solution. And we talk a lot about balancing health risks versus economic benefits and all that stuff. But, if they could test all the baseball players beforehand and keep them apart and get them to want to do it and keep fans out of the stadium for a while and have it in Arizona and make it work. I mean, I'm in. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but it seems as though they're really trying to make it work.
Of course, they are trying. Of course, with the news that's being led the way that it is, and honestly, with a little bit of optimism in the news, just about the curbing maybe working a little bit, and maybe that the death tolls maybe a little bit lower. They might use that as a justification to do it. I'm all for. I would love for them to play, but I just want to point out that I don't think it's I just don't think it's really going to end up going down that way. It's going to be hard for me to imagine how that works. Like, I don't know. It's hard. I guess it's everything that you've never seen before you can be skeptical of. But one thing that's really disturbing that's going to start becoming more and more in the news, and I've sort of been harping on it since the very beginning, is that we really have no idea the actual death toll or how many people actually have this disease. That part we have to just understand. We have no idea how many people have it, and we have no idea what the death rate is. It's going to take a long time to figure that out, especially with how long the incubation period has been for certain people with this disease. The article that was on the cover of CNN at the beginning of the day, although it's changed since the update from the White House, was about basically how there are massive amounts of deaths that they don't know that are being called other things, and some that they aren't even giving. They don't know what to call them, or they're just calling them the flu, because they don't know whether or not these people had it. And to test, unless every person in the U.S. got tested, you'd have no way of knowing how many people are dying from this or how many people have it. Without being able to do that, I don't know how it's going to be easy to start up a sporting event again. Baseball would be the one that makes the most sense because there isn't physical contact between the players very much. There's a little bit. There isn't even that, like, how does sliding, you know what I mean? Like, there's like, you're going to go into bases, like when you're standing on the same base as the guy who's trying to pick you off, like there's a lot of plays that you're tagging people. I don't understand. I guess you're wearing gloves. I'm just thinking out loud. Like, to me, it still feels like it's just too soon to be having these conversations. But I do think that I hope that I'm wrong. And I hope that it's not going to be until September till any sport happens. But that is my personal guess at the moment.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Again, I just feel as though the timing of all these releases, and hockey too came out with something. Wait a minute.
Yeah, because they all met on Sunday.
That's what I mean. So they all met. So you think they're just
the takeaway from the public is very different than the takeaway from the experts that I trust.
Right.
Like
right.
Zach Lowe, Bill Simmons, even Ryan Russillo. I mean, all the guys on the ring, everybody who's actually connected and knows the owners of different franchises and knows the actual commissioner and all this. When they start saying that after these meetings, that's what they sort of took away from what they'd heard, that's way more important to me than what anybody's saying in a public forum right now.
And again, the negative view is that, okay, Trump told us we want to play. We better at least like come up with some kind of response saying we're trying.
Well, last time we tried to reopen the country, we ended up shutting it down more than ever because we had to. I mean, right. Who knows what he says?
No, but what I mean is that it's probably maybe one conspiracy way of looking at it is that the sports leagues have to come out with some, plan, even though they think it has no chance of happening. You know what I mean? Just to make everybody, feel better or something like that. But
yeah.
Yeah.
The NBA is really hard to see that happening.
Yeah, NBA.
More than any sport is the one I see that are look. People are in football already willing to turn a blind eye to something we know is going to damage your brain and kill you potentially. Like, I mean, it's really bad. At best case scenario, it's bad. And I don't see the players having as much of an issue in football as I can imagine in other sports.
And if there's a baseball player that doesn't want to play, they're really going to make him?
No, if they don't want to play, I can't imagine. I just don't.
And they'll pay him?
No way. There's no way you can if the rest of the league is playing and agrees on it. It depends on what they decide and what the players.
It's what the Players Association agrees to. Right?
And I imagine the Players Association will be very happy to make it happen because that is the only way they're going to end up being able to get paid. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't not have a. So I think the players would be on board for it for baseball for sure, and even for basketball, the players might be on board. It just seems like you better know for 37 days after the last guy was, it's been 37 days, then the last guy's tested, hasn't been around anybody else, couldn't have gotten it in that time. That's how far you have to be from this thing to even at this point make sense. And honestly, that number could get higher. So that's just my personal take on it.
I want to follow up with you on one more thing. Scott wrote it down.
Okay, I got to have a little poker at the end because I'm still tilting a little bit.
It's going to take me 5 minutes.
Okay.
So just because I brought him up before. So I couldn't, remember I told you about there was a, this kind of basketball hustler that was able to shoot 90 out of 100 threes, Vegas guy, and 85 bank shots. I couldn't remember the guy's name. I reached out to Zach Famey, who's this guy I knew who told me about him, and I did find the guy's name. So I just wanted to let you know who that was. Yeah. So he's way too old to do it now. This goes back like 20 years. His name was Clint Keown. So he's actually more of a golfer now, and he plays some poker too. But he was the guy. Now he's like already like 40 something. So he's he probably can't do it anymore. But this guy, if you look him up, I mean, he was like a savant. I mean, he played baseball, he played basketball. He played basketball for Evansville when they were in the tournament, and he got into a fight with the coach, and he had to leave there. So he went to South Carolina, Aiken, where he was like the leading scorer in their history or something like that. And he became like a poker player / golf guy or whatever. And this was the guy. This was the guy. I mean, again, this. Remember, it's so funny how long this was ago, because I remember when I heard the story from Famey, this was 2006, like 14 years ago, and that story was already probably like a year or two old. So this is now almost 20 years since this guy was able to do it. So there's no way this guy's still doing it. But this happened to be the guy's name. Just to throw that in. Just to throw that in.
So he went to South Carolina too?
No, South Carolina, Aiken, which is like
my bad.
JUCO. Yeah, he went to Evansville. That was for his main thing, and then he like left after his junior year after like some spat with the coach or something like that.
Seems like he was a pretty good baseball player too.
Yeah, he was like a savant. He's also like a real high stakes golf hustler now. Like he's like just one of those I don't know who he is. Probably some piece of shit. You know what I mean? I don't know. But I shouldn't say I don't know the guy. But so that was the end of that. I'll let you get back to doing poker because you got to make up for Sunday, man. You gotta take something down today.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm even going to end up playing today. No, I mean I got to get to talk some poker.
Oh, let's do it then. No, go for it.
I'm not worried about playing. So here's the thing that I want to point out in this new world of poker that my personal take is that the average days on America's Card Room.
Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Okay.
So if you play the full slate, it's much higher than an old full slate would have been.
Oh, are you kidding me? It's not even close.
Right. I know.
It's like ridiculous.
People still don't seem to. I keep telling them this all the time. You've got multiple 600s. You've got the re-entry factor. You've got a 1K every day. You've got actually you probably got 3 or 4 600s, and then you've got a bunch of 200s, 100s, 50s. Yep. There's just it goes on and on. So Sunday was the biggest poker day that I've seen on an online site since before Black Friday. Like it was a big day. I mean, we had multiple $1 million guaranteed tournaments. We had a huge 1K buy-in, a bunch of big 200s, 300s, 100s, a bunch of tournaments. I made 3 final tables. One was a $50 tournament. I finished 8th. One was a $200 tournament. I lost the chip lead with pair over pair, 7s over 6s, blind on blind. Finished 8th in that one. And I finished 6th in the other one, but it was a smaller one. So I did play the big ones. The 3 big ones, I had a stack. It took my 5th bullet on my 600. My first 3 all-ins on the 600. I just want to vent real quickly. Had aces all 3 times. Lost all 3 times. All in pre-flop. But then I built up a big stack on my 5th bullet in that tournament and lost a pot for a little more than double average right before heading to day 2, and the money basically. The 2500 was much more brutal, and I haven't even told you that one yet. I had about, I think I want to say I had about maybe 40%, 30% over average going into this hand. Raise under the gun, playing 7-handed, flatted in flat from the second position, flat from the button, flat from the small blind. I flat with Jack 8 of diamonds from the big blind. The flop comes out ace king 5 with 2 diamonds, the ace and the king of diamonds. Checks around, turn cards a 3 of diamonds. I bet. I get flatted by one guy who's been pretty loose with his calls, but at that point, he's got a big hand. River cards blank. I have the second nut flush. We got it in. He had queen 10 of diamonds. I had jack 8 of diamonds. That's pretty much just what happens. And that was kind of a brutal one because Anthony told me afterwards, I think I was 4 places off the money and I had a big stack anyway. I mean, obviously I couldn't have won that pot because he was going to beat me all the time. But even if I just win it with my flop bet, I'm then over double average just because of all the money in the pot already. It just would have been nice to have a good run in that, it was a big tournament payout. It was a couple $100,000 at least for first. And there wasn't all that many people left. So it was feeling exciting for a minute. And then in the 1K, I did cash, but I ended up bubbling the final table. So look, I don't feel like bad like I played it. Look, even if I just cash in the 500 and the 600 and all that stuff, the 2,500 and the 600, I still end up even being okay for the day. But I ended up getting slammed because, these tournaments cost a lot of money. And then, I think I had 6 entries in one of the 200s that I ended up finally tabling. So I barely made money on that. Just a lot of money you can get out there real quick. I did feel good with my play. I was up about 26K going into the day since this quarantine started. I would like to say that I'm up still now, just a little less than, probably in the 18K range. That was a pretty big losing day for me. Maybe 19 or so. But I'm trying to figure out how to wean. So I need to be able to play the big days. I don't want to miss another. I want to play a Sunday full Sunday. I don't want to have to not re-enter tournaments that I should re-enter. So I'm sort of saving for that, but at the same time, I want to keep playing because it's still been my best income. But the problem is it's hard to play when you're risking a lot for not all that much. I mean, not all that much. Look, it'd be great to win 25K, 30K in a day. I'd be thrilled with that. But you're risking the same amount you used to would have to risk to win 100K on a big tournament series or something like that. Or it just feels like a lot of money is going out without the ultimate high return unless you win 2 tournaments in a night, which is totally doable. But you're only going to play 8 to 10, so you got to realize it's probably unlikely. So I'm just struggling a little bit with how to exactly manage my bankroll. I just thought it was sort of an interesting thing that I would bring up. I didn't want to just talk about bad beats. I've also had some days where I've run extremely hot. But it's Friday was in some ways more brutal than Sunday because I had the final table in 3 tournaments and they were the biggest tournaments. It was the 1K, the 600, and the biggest 215, and that would have been each of those were like 45, 50,000 first place. And I had the chip lead, with less than 2 tables to go, certainly in all of them. So I was running hot then. I just didn't run out the end. I'm ready to get back to it. I just don't know when I want to play. And I'm trying to be a little bit cautious about when I jump back in, because I don't want to just lose 6K on a day where I'm not totally focused on it.
Yeah. Well, okay. So so my advice, again, this is my whole thing, is that is that you should just play. You know what I mean? That you should just play. That whenever you can play something you're a favorite in, you should just play. And I will say that, as usual, I would imagine that and this goes back to way back when the PokerStars was like, would really track it, is that obviously Sunday is kind of the best day, and then the weekdays normally are just a little tougher, I think. Because you don't get as many just kind of like weekend guys.
I think it was like that. I think it's the opposite at this moment on this site.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What I was going to say then is that it's become like Sundays. I mean, it's just so much money. You know what I mean?
I mean, my tables at 2,500 on Sunday were literally. I played with everyone or knew all of them from hearing about high stakes. Guys who played 25, 50K no limit heads up. Like, everybody was playing. Everybody. G-Boro was at my table. It was just like everybody from the old days.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah, he was playing pretty good too. I mean, we had a few little battles. There was a lot of guys just from the old days. Lucky, what's his name?
Lucky Chewy?
No, Luke
Schwartz.
Luke Schwartz, but also Lucky. Who's the one I'm thinking about? He's always playing these days. In all the big buy-ins, it's Full Flush.
Oh, okay.
Is that Luke Schwartz? That is Luke Schwartz, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's been going on? So I played some Sunday, didn't do so well. I got a huge stack and I'll give you my observations. I got an enormous stack in the 600. I think I was at one point. I mean, it was still like a couple levels left of registration, which means probably half the field was gone anyway. But I was like in the top 10. I mean, I had a lot of chips, and quite honestly, Bob, I didn't really have to do too much to get it. I mean, I'm not that's not my style. I always play close to GTO and just make really good decisions. I'm not the aggressive player that's going to just build like the top 10 stacks. It's not my thing, right? Mm-hmm. But I was able to do it just by playing, you know what I mean? And then, you know how it goes, just a couple all-ins lost and I was just out, right? So yesterday I played the I just fired up this 125K guaranteed thing, just because I don't even remember what part of registration it was in. It was probably level, I don't know, 20, whatever the hell it was. So I played it, and then next thing you know, not even next thing you know, I'm just kind of playing, just kind of like regular, good pre-flop poker, good solid poker, a post-flop, and whatever it is, and just kept on getting chips, won a couple of all-ins, did whatever, and ended up, like I was telling you offline, I was up like 5th out of 30 with like 30 guys left. I had to bring my laptop to my dinner table. I remember back from the old days, you know what I mean? I had to bring my laptop to the dinner table. I had to do whatever. I told my wife, listen, I'll go watch TV at 10, but only if I'm out. If I'm not out, maybe I'll come up with the laptop and do whatever. And then I just lost a couple of hands or whatever. But what I found, again, this is because I was able to pay attention because I was really just on the one table of what people were doing, at least the tables I was at. So I felt as though there weren't a lot of, this makes sense. There weren't a lot of like all in or fold mistakes that I saw. Like, and I think that's part of the development of the snap shove and all the different tools that have kind of get people to be a little bit better with the all ins and the all in and fold and stuff. Like, I'll just give you an example. Like the one of the hands that kind of crippled me, I made a kind of a standard shove, small blind, big blind, 7-9 of clubs, and the guy had like 11 big blinds or something like that, and the guy thought. After a while, he called with Queen Jack, and it was actually a very good call, but it was not. It's like the type of call that, like, seriously, 6 years ago, like no one's making, but it's less people would make. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I didn't see a lot of errors with that. I was able to get away with a lot of just normal stuff, like when someone would raise from the cutoff, if I have like the right stack in the small blind or big blind, I would be shoving like really, really liberally, and I really didn't get anybody calling me there. So I feel as though my initial take is that people's just pure pre-flop game is all in or fold is pretty strong, but but like the 3-bet and the 4-bet stuff, it's either a combination of being too tight, or as you said, sometimes it looks like they might be just kind of clicking buttons without a plan, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I was noticing. The other thing I didn't get a lot of, and again, maybe this is because I wasn't involved in any hands like this, I didn't get a lot of pressure post flop. In other words, like I just didn't get a lot of like situations where, okay, I check back on the flop and then I bet the turn. I never got like raised. You know what I mean? Like I never
agree
went.
totally with that. Yeah, that last part is I'm totally on board with. The pre-flop play is very different, and the way I play is going to dictate that people play different against me. And especially in the big buy-in tournaments, from literally from hand number 1, because you start off with your 100K or 50K, whatever it is, and you're using 100 big blinds. People are 3-betting right away every single time with me. What they won't do is they won't make the big bluff shove. So I find that I'm 4-betting more often, because I'm not going to, or you know, if I have to narrow my open range, fine. But I usually don't. I usually would rather get into the spot where I'm building chips and putting pressure on people when it makes sense, of course. So I pulled off more 4 and 5 bets than I had in a little while. I had a monster hand that I thought was really interesting that I actually wish I just had. Wish I could just call it up. I don't even know if it's possible.
Yeah, you know how to do that. So are you looking at my computer right now?
Yeah, I am.
So what you could do is you open up Explorer or whatever, and then you could just and then search for your ACR folder.
Mm-hmm.
And in the ACR, you see hand history, and you could get all your different hand histories.
Where did I get that on a Mac here? Let me see. I could try that.
I'm one of those guys. Never had an iPhone, never had a Mac, so I don't know.
Maybe I'll do it on the next one. But basically, the gist of the pot was it was a 9-10 Jack, 9-10 Jack King 4 with 3 hearts. The heart hit the river. I 3-bet pre-flop. I check called the flop, King Jack 10 flop.
And what'd you have?
I had ace queen suited.
Okay.
I rivered the nut flush too. I had a flush draw. I literally had all of it. I ended up getting into a 300 big blind pot. So I check called the flop. I check called the turn, and I led shift the river for about 1.5 times pot when the heart hit, hoping that he had a queen that he could pay me off, because I knew he was calling me down light, because he's done that to me a bunch of times lately. This guy Levanthier, I can't actually pronounce his name, but it's something like that. He's actually a good player. I'd gotten him earlier in a big one too, where he made kind of a mistake, and he didn't wait all that long before calling off 80% of his stack in the 2500 with ace jack, with a jack on a king jack 10-9, a king jack 10-9 for 3 heart board, for that many big blinds. And that just gives you a little bit of an idea of how some people are going to play against me. Like, so I have to do a lot of, I either can adjust my play, which I'll do at times. You know, there's plenty of times where
do you think that people that are playing, I mean, you've only been playing.
100%, they 100% know it. They're writing me, and they don't even they weren't even chatting when I first started. Now they're writing me chat. And also, usually I've got a pretty big stack, and I've had some good results lately. You can shark scope results, and people have noticed it. And also, if you played with me, if I have a big stack, I'm gonna absolutely just play what I think is the right way, and that's apply the most pressure as much as possible while risking as little chips. So I put a ton of pressure on with big stacks, so people play me as if I've always got a big stack, even if I don't. Anyway, that's just sort of my initial thoughts. But I do think that I've been impressed by the higher buy-in tournaments. That I think the field has been pretty good. If they've made one mistake, I think they're playing their post flop, too much calling, almost never raising on any flops, turns, or rivers. That's where I would say the biggest mistakes I've noticed being.
Right.
But anyway, that's poker. So today I'm not like there's nothing that's going, oh, you have to play today, Bobby, for me. So maybe I'll skip today and play tomorrow. But I definitely want to be back in it again soon. I think tomorrow might be a little bit of a better day.
I tell you though, they make it tough for you not to play, man. They late regging forever, man. You late regging goes on and on and on.
I stupidly woke up on Sunday at 9:30 because the 600 started at 9. And then I realized I could have just woke up at 1 p.m.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a little party at my house too the night before, and I had to wake up early for it. I was a little groggy, and I was just like, why am I doing this? There's no reason.
Yeah.
You can register until, basically almost till the catch.
Let me know if you do play and you're into something.
All right, likewise. Are you gonna play?
I don't think so today because again, Ashley's making steak and I don't want to miss my steak, so I don't know. We'll see.
I don't blame you.
We'll see how it goes.
All right, man. All
All
right.
right. I'll talk to you later.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in with us. We hope you guys are dealing with the coronavirus well. For Sheets, I'm Bobby saying stay safe out there.
See you later.